Hello, welcome to the People Profit Podcast, the show where we flip the script on traditional business thinking and prove that when you put people first, profits follow. I'm Sandra Coker, your guide on this journey to more engaged teams, loyal customers, and a healthier bottom line. These episodes are brought to you by Human Power Solutions, helping organizations unlock the human potential that powers performance. Whether you're a leader, an HR pro, or a curious change maker, buckle up. We're diving into fresh stories, real-world strategies, and a few laughs along the way. Ready to turn your workplace into a profit-powered people machine? Let's get started. And today I'm thrilled to welcome a guest whose approach to leadership is redefining the way we show up, not just at work, but in life. Iris Cullinan is an executive coach, a leadership development consultant who's gone from the corporate fast lane to launching 2, soon to be 3 businesses with a bold mission to help leaders find success without sacrificing their well-being. That's pretty huge. Her story is one of burnout, breakthrough, and building a human-first approach to leadership that bridges emotional intelligence, nervous system awareness, and high performance. If you've ever felt like you are checking all the boxes of success, but still feeling a little off, this conversation is for you. Welcome, Iris. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Wow, what an introduction. I appreciate it so much. I love hearing that reflected back and absolutely want to double down on the mission. I've been reconnecting to that recently. In simple terms, I want people to get to enjoy work and to do work that they love and live lives that they love while doing that work. It seems so simple, yet so many people are so far from that. So there's a lot of work to do, but I'm here for it and really excited to chat about all of that and how it aligns with your mission, Sandra, too.
I'm very excited. I'm just coming off of a 10-day European cruise with 5 of my girlfriends. And I realized when I got back how burnt out I was. And I had no idea. But I had very little Wi-Fi, really very little connection, didn't open my computer once, which was shocking to my friends. And I said, this conversation is real timely, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, knowing the out of office email I got that sounded amazing with the gelato on the Mediterranean.
That was great. Let's transition. Let's talk about a little bit about your personal story because it's super interesting. And you and I met at a networking event, which is about an hour and 15 minutes from where I come from. And I went just because I was invited. You were invited. We didn't know anybody. And what a cool conversation we had. So, I understand that your journey into this particular space wasn't exactly a straight line, right? In fact, I'd love to start with the powerful moment you shared, the one where you just walked away from it all. Can you take us back to that turning point and how it shaped the work you do today?
Absolutely. Yes, it has been a winding, very interesting journey, still continuing. And it is a great time to talk about that moment. It was actually this month, May of last year. So I just passed the 12-month mark of this, and I remember it very well. Thank you so much. And it was a job I had been at for a few years that I was just giving everything I had and then some to. It was really challenging. I really enjoyed the work I was doing. I was getting to work with some of the largest companies, empowering their teams, doing leadership development programs, and bringing more innovation and safety to the employees. But the way I had to work to deliver that was completely out of alignment with what people need to actually succeed. So that cognitive dissonance is really hard for one. But also I just was in an environment and working with people that, put it nicely, were just not supportive.
Mhm.
And
There are other words for that, Iris.
Yeah, just very diplomatic right now. Yes. And that's the best way I'd sum it up kindly. And I knew I had a target on my back. I'll just put it that way. I'll be a little more blunt about that. I had given everything that I had to this company, and it was made known to me that my time there was numbered, that they were looking for reasons to let me go. So that lack of safety and lack of support, just the dial was turned up on that. There was so much stress. I had such little capacity because I had been in that state honestly for years. I mean, the job before was really demanding. I barely had those couple weeks off here and there.
Mhm.
When I did have that time off, there was so much to process. How could I even begin? And then I'd go right back into it. So I went through this project, and the way I describe it, it was a type of project that if we had maybe 6 weeks, it would have been a really intense sprint to complete it. Yeah, and it was 48 hours to turn around this work for an executive team of a large pharmaceutical company. And I did the best I could. I
Yeah.
had to travel for it. I was up till 1 a.m. before the 7 a.m. meeting working on the slides. And I just had nothing left to give on top of that lack of safety. So I ended up after this trip, I had to take a sick day. I was just so burnt out. And then the next day I came back, there was a client meeting, and I ended up having a call with the person who was my manager at the time. And I wasn't planning on it. The words just kind of fell out of my mouth. And that's the thing with our survival instinct, with
Yeah.
our, when we talk about safety, we really are talking about our bodies and the part of us that did evolve from animals that will do what we need to do to survive.
Yep.
Our bodies will get the rest that they need, whether we choose to do that by taking nice, beautiful vacations, or we completely burn out and are bedridden for weeks. So, and then I say that as if the choice were easy. Of course, nobody wants to go down that path. That's the path I went down. I didn't want that path. Yeah, and I was deactivated on, it was a remote job, deactivated within 5 minutes of this conversation, and haven't looked back, haven't regretted it. It's been a wild journey since then. I wasn't active in my business at the time. How could I be with that demanding job?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
She looks so on the outside, here's Iris. She looks successful on paper. You've got everything going for you, working for a great company, right? What were some of the signs that you might be ignoring? And on top of that, why do you think so many high performance leaders kind of push through that until they hit a wall? Because you had said it was years, so you were pushing through, and then it was like, bam, I'm done.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is those daily choices that you think, oh, just this one time, I'll just work early and I'll push through this deadline. And, oh, sorry, friends, I have to cancel on your plans, and I'll just order takeout instead of cooking a nice meal. And then those habits start to become more routine. And now all of a sudden, it actually takes a lot more effort to go and reach out to those friends, to go to the gym, and you are getting so depleted also, of course. So you're slowly eroding at your energy stores, and you're also reinforcing these habits. And we don't live in a vacuum, we don't work in vacuums. So we're getting a lot of these behaviors reinforced. I was often working with leaders that were maybe out of one side of their mouth, they were saying that we believe in work-life balance here. Of course, take a vacation. But then when I'm on vacation, I might be getting an email that's angry about where was this document, or on weekends, that type of thing.
Yep.
And I saw that, and I've worked in the HR space. So there's a lot of people that are saying the thing that is en vogue, which is, right, bring your whole self to work.
Yeah.
Self, yeah, of course, we're family. We're here to care for you, until that sentence ends. And then the next thing that is out of their mouth is about how they were up working until 2 a.m. or through the weekend, and they got so much done and it's so great. Or the people that they're promoting, that they're recognizing, are the ones that are doing that behavior. So all of these things just add up. There's really, I can't say that there's one thing that is a warning sign, but just recognizing how much time your job, your work is taking from you, and what else you have to give.
Yeah.
Because the relationships, your self-care, just even having hobbies and interests, these are things that I've had to remember how to do. I didn't really have furniture in my apartment for like a year and a half because I was so burnt out. So
And my producer's laughing here because, he's about to move and he's like, I wish I didn't have furniture.
pros and cons.
It's interesting. It is interesting. Coming back from this, I haven't taken that long of a vacation in a long time. And I own my company. So there's no one breathing down my neck and giving me deadlines. And I really realized I hadn't been working out, hadn't been eating well, just taking care of myself. And we were actually just talking, Yosemite and I were just talking about that before you came on, about just kind of getting back into those habits. And, I think that so many people that are driving right now, you're going to burn out and the wall is going to it's going to hit you. So you talk about bringing breath work and visualization and nervous system tools into what you do, into your practice. And that might be a little unconventional in corporate settings, but how do you explain the science of this to these skeptical, like highly logical leaders, especially in industries like biotech and finance? Like, how do you explain it to them, like why it's good for them?
Hmm. Yeah, that we don't always know what business we're in or what the job really was when we get into it. I didn't realize that that was actually some of the biggest skills I was learning and getting the experience to be able to see the things that I was just naturally into because I'm a yoga crystal girl. I'm okay with that. But also working in environments where I had to put on a mask, and that's okay. We don't all need to bring every facet of who we are to every situation. It's good to
Agreed.
be adaptable.
Yep.
And so I had to find ways, especially in roles like a facilitator or being a coach or a consultant. It's a skill you need to be able to connect with people and help them and understand them when you might have very little in common with them, and to earn their respect and their trust. So with that, I was working in with a lot of large financial services companies and biotech companies, and just even the word that I was choosing in some of my training. I'm someone that feels things, that can imagine things, and then I found myself perhaps giving an exercise that was about that, and I realized that if I used the words "what do you think about this" rather than "what do you feel about this," then it connected with them. So I'm starting to notice some of those little nuances, and just we interpret things differently. We all have different frames of reference. But it helped me to see a lot of the practices that I just knew were helpful and was interested in naturally. Because when we look at ourselves, when we look at those habits or the lack of positive habits, there can be this morality aspect of it, of like the guilt of, oh, if only I were better. um, but really just seeing our bodies and our minds like machines. They're algebra equations. Input goes in, stress, conversations, information is going in all the time. And we have predictable ways of responding to that. So a lot of the way I look at breath work, for example, is it's really about how do you regulate your nervous system. And our automatic nervous system, that first word, automatic, we cannot necessarily control it. It is the
Sure.
part of us that is controlling our digestion, our heart rate. And when it is activated, like there might be a threat, then the blood stops going to the brain and it goes to the muscles so that we can run. And a lot of us are stuck in that state for most of our days. That's why when you actually get that, you get to step away and you get to experience that relaxation. It's like a completely different world because you are a different version of yourself. You are actually in the parasympathetic nervous system state, which is how we're designed to function. It's how our immune system functions. It's how we're able to access higher levels of thinking because we're not in danger. So
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
thinking about I think about some of the CEOs and some of the business owners, that I work with. I'm sure you've encountered as well. It's all like fluffy, right? And in trying to explain to, because as I don't know if you knew, but I owned a fitness center for 7.5 years, and so I did a lot of CEOs and a lot of executive personal training. I was on the other side, so being on this side of it, kind of knowing like, hey, you're a person too, right? But they also have to put on a facade. So what do you do with those that have that facade, like male or female? This is all a waste of time. We just need to get the work done. Like, how do you convince them that this is so important for their employees and for their productivity and overall success of their organization?
Mhm. Sure. This is a phrase I'm thinking of. I'm not even I think meditation is great. I'm not necessarily a big advocate for it, but there's a phrase out there that If you should meditate for 20 minutes a day, unless you're very, very busy, then you should meditate for an hour every day because it helps so much. It gives you time back. So that's a frame of thinking that I use with this stuff is that, yeah, because you are so busy, these things don't take a lot of time. One of the breathwork practices that I just want to teach everybody is how do we activate out of that fight or flight into the rest and digest state? And it's simply by having a longer exhale than an inhale. So if you counted in for 2 and out for 4, and you did that 3 times. And when I teach this, I intentionally we only do 3 breaths, keep it to 30 seconds. And how are you feeling before? How are you feeling after? You are already breathing anyways. You're not thinking about it.
Yep. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And this can make such a huge impact because communication, a lot of us mistake what's happening, the words coming out of our mouth for communication, with people actually understanding it, receiving it, us actually understanding and receiving others. And that's for leaders, that is our work, is to make sure that that communication is happening, that what needs to happen, other people understand that and are able to follow through. And if we are in a state of feeling like there's a threat and we are unsafe, we can't really hear it to the same level and vice versa. So how can we actually make the work that we're doing more effective and more potent? And it's by understanding that just having these baseline levels of wellness are not a nice to have. It's how we actually make all of this sustainable. So we're not just in the same place next year with maybe a slightly different variation of these problems, but essentially the downward spiral that I think a lot of industries are navigating right now.
So one of your philosophies is burnout is a symptom of a broken system. What does that mean?
So how I stated previously, thinking about emotions or habits and with a lens of morality, or if we were good people, it would be going differently. I think understanding burnout is similar because it is a symptom of a system that isn't necessarily uh, no one is necessarily to blame, any one individual or any one action, but a lot of those choices, when I was talking about the choices I was making to skip the gym, to order takeout, to cancel the plans with friends, that's me accommodating the system that's dysfunctional. That if I don't actually give more than I can give and still be healthy, then this system won't continue. So understanding burnout, I mean, we also don't know what any one person is going through, but I found it rather insulting when anybody would come to me as if clearly it was not actually an issue with the company. I think it's important to be humble enough to look at that first and willing to see reality. I think that's another theme and the thing I want people to understand with my work is that it's all about seeing reality more clearly because we are all working through the world with a lot of biases. It's actually very hard to see the same reality as the other people around us are seeing.
Right.
But understanding that also there's a book I really like, especially the title of it's called Canary in the Coal Mine. And it's about neurodivergence at work. And it's this idea that the people who are neurodivergent, whose minds don't work similarly to the majority of the other people there, so that might be a diagnosis or it might just be who they are.
Right.
That those people might be the ones that are experiencing the symptoms first because they have perhaps in some ways less bandwidth. They just are impacted more quickly in deeper ways than the people that maybe just are a better fit for this system, even though no one really is.
Right.
But the things that are good for everybody are especially good and helpful for the people who have less bandwidth, who aren't necessarily who the system was designed for. So I talk about neurodivergent people, but anybody who is of a identity and a background that isn't the typical privileged background.
I just wrote that down, by the way. I just wrote down that book. I've been doing this podcast has been so fun because I get all these books to read, which is really great. Because there are so many different kinds of personalities in our workplace these days, along with 5 different generations. There's all these different socioeconomic personalities, different autistic, all these things that are here in our workplace. It's hard to have one system because it doesn't fit everybody. And I think that's really important about redesigning and rethinking how we lead and what our workplace actually looks like, so we can help people get the maximum joy out of the work that they're doing. I think that's really important. And we talk a lot about, needing some seasons of action and rest. And it's something that this hustle culture that we're in rarely allows. What does it look like? What would you recommend? What does it look like for a leader to create space for that rhythm in their team without sacrificing performance? I have my own thoughts on this, but I want to get your thoughts on it.
Yes, I'd love to hear them after. So again, being someone who has been in this environment where my points of view are seen as fluffy when I don't think that. So here's another example, is that this is how nature works. So why are we different? Why are we special? Nature works in cycles and in rhythms. Every life form does this. So why would we be different? We are not machines yet.
That's what I know, right?
So it's important for that renewal, for that regeneration, and for the growth to come with as much energy and zest and vibrance and also sustainability as it can. So it is, if you want to have the capitalist lens, it's so that you can keep growing, that you have the time of rest. But how that can look, I think rest, it's important to have the vacations, but also just in a work setting, understanding that the rest is actually the time to step back and reflect and assess, and to have the pressure off of getting the next thing out the door right now when we haven't properly understood what just happened. So it's really just allowing for cycles to complete and to be more connected and aware to what's actually happened and intentional about what needs to happen next. I think there's just a lot of issues with a lot of short-term thinking, and that's what is at the root of a lot of these issues, where we think we don't have time to actually treat people as people. Well, maybe we don't if we're looking in terms of quarters, but if we want to look 5 years out and see where this path is actually heading, maybe we would have made different choices. So now I think we're at this time where leaders need to make those decisions for the organization. Do we want to keep just scrambling by, knowing how this has gone for us here, thinking it's going to go differently?
What's that phrase? You do the same thing and get the same results. So you do it right. It's just going to be the same. I think it's fascinating, for part of some of the things that we talk about is, just having coffee time, just putting some time aside, doing 10-minute huddle in the morning, just to say hello, and just to do, especially this hybrid environment. We talk a lot about hybrid, remote, in person. There's so much stuff going on in our companies. It's allowing people that space to be able to connect on another level. And I think that really helps rejuvenate people. And I love so I don't know about you, but talking to leaders, I'm like, when do you take lunch? What's lunch? I just think a mandatory lunch should be across the board, right? And when I was in Europe, the stores were shut down. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning. I was like, why are they shut down? They're like, well, they open up later because they have siesta. I was like, well, that's pretty cool. Like, we don't know what siesta is, but you see the quality of life over there. You go over there and you see there's no really handicapped accessible. There's no accommodate. Like, people are just walking around doing their thing, right? And they're seem to be happy and healthy. And it's pretty fascinating. Yeah, that work, they just kind of figured it.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting, since I've been now self-employed for a year. It's taken some time to shed some of the layers and say, wait, why am I still operating the way I was? Because it's just habits and it takes time. But I've noticed that I tend to work from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, but I take about 2 or 3 hour breaks like twice a day. And because then I can go go exercise, clean, do errands, and reflect and think about what I'm going to do next.
Mhm.
I identify as neurodivergent, and one of those aspects too is learning just how my mind works, and I'm constantly thinking and strategizing. But if I am forced to be sitting at a computer just producing work, it's just not compatible. I'm not able to bring my best talents and best strengths. And when I was an employee, it was hard for that. I was a square peg in a round hole. So now I
Yeah.
get to make my own.
I love that. I know it is beautiful. But there are times when you work for yourself that you're like, wait, I've been working for like 14 hours. Like there are definitely times like that.
Oh,
But it is nice. Like I'm in a golf league every Wednesday. I'm out of work at 3:30 and I'm on the golf course, but those are scheduled things in that you're able to do, to be able to do things like that. So I love that. So, I want to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. I love this topic so much. And you describe it as a science, which I think those of us in this space know that it is. But let's talk about what happens when the leaders ignore this piece, right? What happens? Why do leaders ignore this piece?
mhm.
What do you think?
Sure. Why do they ignore it? I think a lot of people, anything they ignore, it's often coming from it's a lack of understanding. So they might just know that as a buzzword. It's just, oh, emotions, touchy feely. Those are excuses. The rest of us are trying to get some real work done.
Yeah.
And so it, through not having a full understanding of what we mean by emotional intelligence and what you do with that, I think the understanding of emotions as a data point, a piece of data that can help add to an understanding of a situation. And this comes up a lot of the times when I'm working with entrepreneurs or with leaders where they're trying to make decisions that are purely logical. But one of the pieces of information is that they would hate to do one of those options and it would make them unhappy. It's like, how is that irrelevant? That's very relevant
Yeah.
information. So knowing that there's data and then there's how we can interpret it, and then there's what we do with those interpretations. But just ignoring the data,
Right.
that is a mistake, I think. So having an understanding of emotions around any given situation, and especially if you're working with clients, it's interesting how much we would not give employees the same treatment as we would clients. If clients were upset with us, we want to know why. We would get to the heart of it. We would have the conversation. We wouldn't just dismiss it and say, "Oh, they're just being emotional." Of course not.
Right.
But so there's that, and then there's interpreting it. So it might be coming from the system, it might be coming from an issue in the company, or it might be totally unrelated and it is personal, and you would handle those things differently, and the choice of action can come from that. But I like the model, just my frame of reference for emotional intelligence is the Goleman model. So it's about yourself and your relationships and awareness and management, the
Yeah.
lovely two-way quadrants.
Right.
And
It's a good one. It is. But you talk
yeah,
not and talk about that, like that's people profit, right? It's all about the internal workings of your company that drive your client experience. I just feel like that's just something people just aren't talking about, right?
mhm.
Running a business is hard. Developing your people shouldn't be. At Human Power Solutions, we act as your outsourced chief learning officer, designing custom learning and development experiences that actually move the needle. No fluff, no cookie cutter workshops, just results. Whether your people need better communication, stronger leadership, or less burnout, we provide strategic solutions that align with your goals and keep your team moving forward. Visit hpowersolutions.com and unlock your team's full potential without disrupting operations.
The nervous system in your estimation, I love this, is the hidden lever behind leadership behavior, right? So how leaders are feeling, it's kind of like it's how they behave. How do you help how your clients recognize when they're operating from that threat state? And what do they notice about it?
Sure. for recognizing when they're coming from a threat state, if they're working in a typical modern workplace, the answer to that is probably almost always because we are getting the emails, the notifications, we're running from meeting to meeting. So there are so many things. And again, it's not personal. It's not a moral shortcoming. This data, this information is a stimulus that we are having a response to. And when it's we, it might not be our conscious thought, but it is our nervous system, our body. We are jumping, we're getting the pit in our stomach when we look at our work email. So we need to be pouring into to counterbalance that way more than we think we need to. So just going to one massage a week is kind of a drop in the bucket. But that's why I like to teach some of these techniques that, again, you are already breathing all day, every day, awake, asleep, great. So recognizing that, starting to bring more awareness, doing those extended exhale breaths, and some other techniques I like to use. This is a similar one. It's just like these binary choices we can make. We are not actually meant to have our eyes so focused all the time. So these are our two body functions that are unconscious that we can also be conscious over: breathing as well as our vision. We can choose what we want to look at, but we can't necessarily choose what we see when we do that. But so when we actually look through our peripheral vision and we have a more relaxed gaze, we might have our eyes focus on one particular object, but we're actually really looking through the sides of our eyes. That actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system as well. That's something you can do in a meeting. I mean, when we're spacing out, we're kind of doing that anyways. So it's actually that spacing out is kind of a negative phrase for it, but we're actually giving ourselves a mini rest, a mini break. So being intentional, right? Isn't it?
I want to try that right now, but I'm not because I don't want to space out on this podcast. That's best. Any other tricks? Any other things that you can share with our audience? I think this is great.
Sure, I'm full of them. One other one that I like a lot is called bilateral stimulation. So if we have anxiety, if we have ruminations, it's often in one hemisphere of our brain that's just being kind of overactive. So if we stimulate, for example, I have my can of seltzer and just pass it back and forth, but you can also tap on the sides of your thighs, for example, just kind of a even steady tap. Walking actually does this and is part of why the walking can be so relaxing. So that just helps to activate the different hemispheres of the brain and helps to break up that overactivity in one area, that is the anxiety or the stress. And really, that peripheral vision one is good because it quiets your thoughts. It's amazing. The woman who taught me that, she was one of my teachers and she's from New York City. She's a very no nonsense person. And she's like, I need something that will work for me when I'm walking down the Manhattan sidewalk and I don't have time to go do a little meditation. So that's why I've latched on to a lot of these mind body techniques because, like I said, I think meditation is great. At this time, I'm now trying to have a little more of just the quiet, no thought. But sometimes it's very hard to access. So what's something I can do that can be really effective and I can do in the middle of my workday? These are really powerful techniques for that.
I love that. I have the Insight Timer app, and I love that app. So I'm not a big meditation. My daughter is Crystal's yoga. She's all of that. She's always like, Ma, you need to relax. And she's right. I think after this trip, I'm like, she's right. I just got to get myself back into like my own flow. So guided meditation for me, because I think if I sat quiet, my mind would go nuts. So I need to listen to someone tell me what I need to do, like how I'm breathing. But it's true, it's taking a little bit of extra, not even extra time, but just that time. I think it makes you more productive and more energetic. So a lot of times when we talk to leaders except we incorporate wellness into a lot of what we do, because we are a believer in that holistic, experience. Your people are going to be more productive. They're just going to they're going to feel better, feel more rested, less stress, be able to innovate new ideas and all that. I just love this. It's so fun, so fun. And you talk about feedback too, as a connection, and it's about when it's done right. It's about that authentic connection. It's really hard in today's day and age with the digital feedback. We're online, we're in Slack, we're doing Teams, emails, very little face to face. Even Zoom to me isn't face to face. Can you walk us through like feedback moments that don't go well, and how, like, what are some techniques that people can use to really help to create that connection?
Absolutely. I think the worst feedback moments are the ones that don't happen at all. So that would be, I think, the number one thing to avoid is the avoidance. You want to make sure that the feedback actually happens.
Yeah.
Some of the phrases I like to teach around feedback as well is that you want to over-invest in positive feedback. You want to establish that line of communication, open communication, and it also helps to really add to the respect and the connection, the trust with each other, that I know that this person does think highly of me, that over and over they have told me specific things that I have done and the impact that that's had. I think those are important factors in feedback as well, so that when there is the critical feedback, it's delivered as quickly as possible in private, as closely and focused about the data, what happened, what the behavior was, what the impact was, what is going to be done differently, establishing that together. So when you get to that, because we do have that, again, nervous system reaction of like,
Right.
we feel like we're in trouble, we're not safe. And we can't ignore the fact that for a lot of people, their jobs are survival. A lot of people, it's their survival, it's their families, it's their children's survival. There's a lot of depth to that. It doesn't come from nowhere. So when there is that piece of feedback that is critical, as you did something wrong, you would just want to overinvest in making sure that when you get to that moment, that the trust is there, it's received well. And I think it's important too, if it feels like the person didn't receive the feedback well, maybe you did everything right in your eyes and they still had a negative reaction, recognizing that that's okay. And it's important to let people process, have their time, giving them the option to do that. I think I've been in situations where the person, I was getting upset and the person wouldn't let me just go process, and it created a really negative experience for both of us.
Yeah.
And giving them permission to do that, and then you will follow up with them when that emotion has had a chance to process. And I think this comes back to emotional intelligence as well, recognizing that when people are in emotional states, as it's normal, it is natural. We are human beings. And that is something to keep in mind about what kind of conversation you can have at that time. So the kind thing to do is to give someone the option to not have to be in a professional setting with a boss or a supervisor or colleague. Allow them to go process that in their own time and then come back to it and make sure to still come to a resolution, to a shared understanding, to the degree that you can.
Right. And I think too, it's when we talk to our leaders and work with our leaders, when they're about to give feedback to someone, one of the things that we advise is understanding who the person is you're giving feedback to, and saying, I've got some feedback for you. Is now a good time, or, do you want to set some time? So it allows them to kind of choose and kind of prep and get ready for that kind of conversation. So I think really understanding that. So many times people want to jump on a problem or jump to something that and someone's just not ready to go. For me, come right at me and tell me what what you're thinking, and then we'll have a conversation right there. But for I've got an older son. It's like, hey, I want to talk with you. When are you ready? Kind of thing. And everyone's so different. So different. Have you ever had one of those moments where you gave feedback and it didn't go very well?
All the time, for sure. Yes. And it always was because at the time I was making assumptions that that person was more like me than they actually were. So that is, I think, a great example of what you were just saying. Over the years, I have recognized that I need to check those assumptions. And as you're getting to know people, it's important to not just be at building the relationship, building that trust, but also being very aware, actually learning about this person and asking things that you aren't sure about. So recognizing also that some people might just care about different things. I think the memory that's coming up for me was there was a leader that I thought cared about not offending people and being inclusive. There are reasons that made me believe that they cared about that. And there was a situation at a webinar that they gave where an attendee was offended by something that they said. And I think accused them of gaslighting them or as a microaggression. It was
Right.
that
Yeah.
it was racially charged. It was like, oh my gosh, this is bad. They were posting about it on LinkedIn afterwards. It's like clearly this is a nightmare. And I put in a lot of emotional labor to not criticize this person. I mean, clearly they saw these messages as well. But my assumption was that they cared, and I put in a lot of effort to help them understand what I saw, what had happened, to try to help them. And I was meant for that basically. And I think it added to a negative perception they had of me. So
Wow. Yeah. It's just crazy out there. It really is. It's like it's navigating a minefield sometimes. And
yeah.
you've worked with global corporations. Now you're consulting independently year in. Yay. I love that. That's one of my favorite things is when people are like, wait, I can do this. And you've got that confidence. So, but looking across the board now, from Fortune 500s to solopreneurs, what's the biggest shift you believe leaders need to make today? What do we really need to start focusing on for the future?
Mhm. I think it's really about thinking bigger, thinking longer term. And I think we don't have a lot of great examples of that. And there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of fear that is driving that short term thinking. And I imagine that a lot of executives wouldn't think that of themselves. Of course, I am a strategic thinker. I'm thinking
Right.
big globally towards the future. But really just even seeing our society, seeing where that's headed, whether you have children or not, what kind of world are we going to leave for the next generation? I was thinking about that with some of the people that I had worked with that I had really bad experiences with. And I know that nobody wakes up and thinks, yes, I'm just going to be the villain in somebody's life today. And I can't wait to just do all these evil things and just be horrible to people. But I think that makes it even more concerning is that there's a lot of people that are waking up and that's the experience other people are having of them. And whatever's going on for them internally either just doesn't see that, doesn't think that that's relevant or important. And these are people that I'm thinking of that are parents and just, just opportunities you want to have for your child. But being aware of that and being intentional that might also mean some short-term sacrifices. That's been a
Mhm.
huge thing for me as an entrepreneur too, is because a lot of my goals, all of it's long-term.
Right.
There are no quick wins. There is no short-term quick cash grab to be the kind of entrepreneur and leader and thought leader that I want to be, which is hard because I also live in the world of bills and rising grocery costs. But I have to make those choices all the time to not get caught up in the busyness and just the constant momentum. So I think that's really important with this aspect of stepping back too, is that we're surrounded by people that are so overwhelmed, whether they know it or not. And there's just so much action that there's no way that we can actually have that wider perspective, that longer term view, And it doesn't feel good when you choose to do that. You don't get rewarded. You don't get the instant dopamine, yay, I get an award and everyone's, giving me a round of applause. Yeah, you don't get that. So you also have to train yourself. And this is part of my work too, is just understanding our minds and our bodies as machines, and some of the levers that work predictably, like dopamine. Like, we love dopamine. We want more. A lot of us are addicted to that and seeking those short-term thrills, but we need to train ourselves to actually get that reward validation from our brains for more long-term investments that we're making.
Ah, so awesome. Oh, so awesome. So when you talk about building a bridge between strategic and the somatic, what do you mean by that?
Mhm. So again, a lot of what we've been talking about is uh, in the world, people seeing there's taking care of ourselves, and then there's getting things done, and they're mutually exclusive. And I cannot actually get things done strategically if I'm taking care of my body. And a lot of times, that even people identify with these things. And that's when I say things like, I'm a yoga crystal girl. I say that in kind of a joking way, because a lot of people would like to put me in that box.
Right.
But
So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's so much more than that. But that's a huge part of who you are. That's a huge part of why I think you're super effective, is because you have that perspective for leaders. You actually think about that for leaders. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, that's okay. Thank you. Right. These are hobbies I have. They're interests. I like a lot of different things.
I like motorcycles. That's my yoga,
Right.
so.
But I think to that point, like, you also don't necessarily go out through the world wearing a sign on your head that you are a biker chick. You get to just have your hobby. You get to enjoy it. You get to be a multifaceted whole person. And I think with this, like, somatic and strategic, there's a lot of people out there that are completely ignoring their bodies, not taking care of it. They are not healthy. They are not living long, healthy, happy lives because they're ignoring their bodies. And they're telling themselves that that is a smarter choice, that would be a waste of time. But really, because I said we're not machines. Now I'm going to say we are machines. We are machines in the biological sense. We are organisms, at least. When we take care of our body, when we nurture it, we are able to actually make so much more strategic, impactful decisions because we have that clarity. Our bodies just won't function if we don't actually take care of them. I know, mind blowing.
It's the society, right? So our society, the way it's fast, grab fast, go out for a drink after work, turns into 2, right? Turns into maybe 3. Like, there's a lot of things that are just part of our world that aren't good for our bodies. And I think that's really a shift that many people need to make, to really thrive.
Yeah. And I think to go back to that aspect of burnout being a symptom of the system, self-compassion and compassion for everybody that is in this system, I think, is healthy too. As we are navigating through these systems and trying to live in ways that are really not permitted, don't fit with the way things have been designed around us and before us. It's hard. And yeah, you are going to put in all the energy you have into making those good diet choices, and then you're just going to drive by the fast food line at the wrong time. And next thing you know, where did the burger even go?
Wait, how did French fries get in my mouth?
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious. I wanted to ask you though, what benefits have you seen just these past few days after your vacation?
So I wear an aura ring. So I've been wearing it since December, and I've really watched my habits, my eating habits. I love going out, having a couple of glasses of wine, and I just came back from vacation with that mindset of, that's actually not good for my body. Like, it's not good for my sleep. It's not good for, like, how I feel. Not motivated to exercise. And I got home Saturday. Today's Wednesday, whatever day it is. And my sleep score is in the 90s. my readiness is up. I feel better. I'm still jet lagged, but just, I went out last night to a networking event and a bunch of ladies, they're all having Cosmos and all that. I'm like, I'm just gonna have water.
Mm.
Right. Like, and it's like, well, I really want to take care. And they had pizza and I was like, "Oh, I love pizza, but I had the salad and, some other things that were, I'm just like, it's huge, I think. And I think so many of us overlook that. So,
Mm.
and I also have an accountability partner, i.e. my husband, who is also kind of on this track as well. And we're like, we had this conversation this morning. I'm like, we have been so busy doing all of this stuff. I'm working, wrote the book, doing all this stuff. He's taking care of a bunch of things. And I said to him this morning, I'm like, we have to put ourselves first, like our bodies first. And it's so cool, like when you make that mind shift. But also I feel like there's also a you don't want to let yourself down, right? Oh, now I'm at that point where I'm like, no, I'm not. I made a promise to myself. I'm going to keep it.
Mm. Beautiful. Wow. Yeah. Well, it's so important. You're just going to have such an even more positive impact. You already were, but the impact on your clients, just even on me, getting those Mediterranean vibes from you. It's great. We can have such a positive impact on the people around us. And I think that's an aspect of how this relates to leadership too. It's just recognizing when we are happy, we're healthy, we feel good, we're nicer. We are more easy to be around.
Yeah.
And we work better. And all of that is important. All of that adds up. The relationships in your family. Those are so important to pour into. So that's
No,
great. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, thanks for that's a great question. And so this has been just a refreshing and grounding conversation. I think I'm really hoping our listeners just get a lot out of this and just start thinking about what they're doing for themselves and understanding we have one body, and we got to take care of it every single day. And you said you bring such a great, unique sense of that blend of science, wisdom, and that heart for leadership. I'd love to have you talk a little bit about your business and what you do. And then, if anyone wants to explore kind of this work more deeply, how can they find you?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I really enjoyed this as well. I knew I would. We were instant soulmates at that, friend soulmates at that networking event. So the businesses I run, I'm a executive coach and a leadership development consultant. So I work with organizations of all sizes and leaders across different industries. So you can find me at iriscullinan.com. And my specialties, I think you've gotten a sense of them in this episode, but resilience, navigating change, having wellness be a part of the culture that actually drives the culture and drives results. Those are all my areas of expertise, as well as communication, also very important. I also run a business called Rare Fortune, and that's where I tend to work more with individuals. So a lot of entrepreneurs, also leaders. And there I do more work that is personal, emotional, spiritual, but it's for those that are on a path, especially to be doing work that is meaningful, that maybe you know what your purpose is, maybe you don't. But I'm here to help you navigate that, get clear, and get on that path, be as successful as possible doing it, which is not easy, but so worth it. Wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm also starting a new venture as a branding and web designer because it's just another way I like to serve entrepreneurs.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
And you do it all with such great heart. Thank you again, Iris. And to all of you listening, remember, leadership just isn't about control. It's about connection. So again, appreciate you being on our episode, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of the People Profit Podcast. If you found a nugget of wisdom or even just a spark of inspiration, share the love, subscribe, leave us a review, and pass the episode along to a colleague who's ready to build a people-first culture. Big thanks to our sponsor, Human Power Solutions, for championing workplace where humans thrive and profits rise. Want to learn how they can energize your team? Head over to hpowersolutions.com to get started. I'm Sandra Coker, reminding you that when you invest in people, you invest in profit. See you next time.